Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Ohio EPA's webinar, Intro to New Construction and Demolition Debris Rules for Community Leaders. This webinar is part of our In Your Community webinar series, focusing on environmental issues at the local level, covering a wide range of topics from how Ohio EPA regulates pollution sources to ways on improving the environment in your local area. My name's Helen Miller with the Division of Environmental and Financial Assistance here at Ohio EPA, and I will be moderating this morning's presentation with Ohio EPA's Aaron Shear from our Division of Materials and Waste Management. We also have a team of staff from DMWM available to answer questions behind the scenes as they come in this morning. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few items to help you participate and engage with our presenters during this morning's presentation. On this slide, you see an example screenshot of your attendee interface. You should see something that looks like this on your computer desktop on the right-hand side of your screen. For this presentation, you are listening in using your computer audio. If you're having sound issues or if the slides stop advancing, please try refreshing your browser. If that doesn't work, try logging off and logging back in. Please feel free to submit questions to the presenter by clicking on the question mark icon and typing them into the questions pane on your attendee interface. You may send your questions in at any time during the presentation. We'll try our best to answer questions as they come in and during the Q&A portion. If we don't answer your question during the Q&A portion, we will reach out to you via email following today's webinar. This webinar is being recorded, and you will receive an email after the webinar with a link to the recording, a link to the survey, and a link to your certificate of attendance. The survey will also pop up once this webinar ends. We value your feedback and would greatly appreciate it if you let us know how we're doing and let us know if there's anything we can do to further assist you. Now I'd like to introduce our presenter, Aaron Shear. Aaron is the supervisor of the Construction and Demolition Debris Unit with the Division of Materials and Waste Management at Ohio EPA's Central Office. Aaron currently provides coordination and support activities, compliance monitoring, and technical assistance to health districts along with the regulated community regarding C&D processing facilities and landfills. He has a bachelor's degree in geology from the College of Worcester. Aaron has over 20 years of combined private and public sector environmental experience, 8 with an environmental consulting firm and the last 13 with Ohio EPA. He's a registered environmental health specialist in the state of Ohio. With that, I'm going to turn the microphone over to Aaron.
Thank you, Helen. So yes, this morning I'll be talking about the new construction and demolition debris processing facility rules and how community leaders play within that rule program. Before jumping into the presentation, I want to do a quick poll. I always like to know my audience before giving a presentation so I know who I'm speaking with, kind of see what kind of distribution of participants are on today's webinar. So with that being said, I kind of want to know everybody's affiliation. Are you with a land bank, local or state government, federal government, or a construction, demolition, debris, landfill, or processing facility owner, operator, or somebody else participating in today's webinar? So in a second here, I'll open up the live poll and please select your answer.
Okay, I have launched the poll. It should pop up for you in just a minute. So it looks like a lot of you have voted. If you can wrap up your votes, I'll go ahead and close the poll here and share the results. Okay, and there are your results, Aaron.
Thanks, Helen. So it looks to be like the majority of folks are either local or state government people, but I do see there are some folks from both land banks and the C&D landfill and processing facilities, a small percentage of federal government folks, and then we got about 19% other. So a good mix of people on today's call. So a lot of different views and industry partners as well as health district partners and regulated community. All right. So I am the supervisor of the Construction and Demolition Debris Unit here within the Division of Materials and Waste Management. This division of Ohio EPA ensures that solid waste, infectious waste, scrap tires, and C&DD are managed in accordance with applicable regulations. Here in DEMWM, we do have a mission statement as well as a vision statement. Our mission statement is to protect the public health and the environment by promoting alternative waste materials management options that reduce reliance on landfills, ensuring that waste management facilities are constructed and operated in compliance with applicable laws and regulations. So really our big thing here within DEMWM is we do oversee the landfill programs, but we also really want to promote diversion of materials that can be reused, recycled, and otherwise keep them out of precious landfill space. The C&D Processing Facility Program, which we'll talk about here in a couple of slides, is one of those new programs where we're really pushing the recycling, reuse of some of these byproducts, waste streams, debris that otherwise would go to a landfill. So our mission statement, or our vision statement, has kind of three main points. So DEMWM is a nationally recognized leader in traditional and innovative waste materials management. And the three things are demonstrated by common sense regulations that remain protective of public health and the environment, while emphasizing recycling, energy recovery, and alternatives to disposal. We also want effective working relationships with regulatory partners and quality and timely service to all customers. So when we usually say DEMWM, Division of Materials and Waste Management, I think what mostly comes to people's mind are we're the group and branch of Ohio EPA that regulates the landfills in the state. So we have municipal solid waste landfills, industrial manufacturing waste landfills, and our construction demolition debris landfills in the state. Those are three of our bigger programs statewide. But we also do other programs and oversee other items in the state as well. So we have our fairly new beneficial use program. So when we're looking at drinking water treatment residuals, dredge, there's other different byproducts and waste streams that instead of going to a landfill can be land applied or used as an alternative kind of fill material and other different purposes as opposed to landfill disposal that's still safe and protective of human health and the environment. Another program that we oversee is the composting program in the state. There's different classes of compost facilities, everything from just normal yard waste up to food scraps and other waste streams. Our infectious waste program is one of our smaller programs, but still the treatment of infectious waste is really important in the state. Scrap tires and our mosquito control grants, so proper hauling, transportation, storage of scrap tires, making sure that they're not breeding grounds for mosquitoes or other vectors, and then as well as the recovery of scrap tires, and then the cleanup mitigation of scrap tire projects. And then we have our solid waste management planning. So we have planners throughout the state that work on local and statewide levels for our solid waste management planning. Ohio EPA is broken up into 5 district offices. We have one central office, which is kind of like our headquarters. We're located here in Columbus, Ohio. And central office folks usually deal with policy, guidance, rule development, overseeing statewide consistency with our district offices. We want to ensure that our various district offices statewide are implementing our program kind of on a level playing field, and we're doing everything consistent statewide. As far as our 5 district offices, that's where mainly our boots on the ground. So we have our inspectors, our engineers based out of our district offices. Central District Office is also here in Columbus. Our Southwest District Office is located in Dayton. Northwest is up in Bowling Green. Northeast is in, drawing a blank here, Twinsburg. And Southeast is down in Logan, Ohio. We also have approved health departments. Our approved health departments statewide are approved to implement our solid waste and our C&DD programs on our behalf. So out of the 113 local health departments statewide, 65 of which are on our approved list. In many instances, that's on a county level, but in several circumstances, there's also approved city health departments. So really our health departments are our regulatory partners when it comes to implementing the solid waste and C&DD program. They're the ones that conduct the inspections, the licensing, oversight of many of these regulated entities. So now let's talk a little bit about construction demolition debris. What is C&DD and what is not C&DD? So construction demolition debris is any material resulting from alteration, construction, destruction, rehabilitation, or repair of any type of physical structure. So when you think of any kind of buildings, industrial buildings, commercial buildings, residential buildings, bridges, any kind of structure, that's really what construction demolition debris is. So it's either generated during the construction phase of these structures or the demolition rehab of types of structures. So when you think about it, it's really the framework of the buildings. It's the brick, it's the coverings, the plaster, drywall, roofing material, any stone, any kind of fixtures to the walls, electrical equipment, the insulation, anything that actually meets kind of the bones, if you will, the actual structure itself. What's not C&DD is kind of the internal components of the structure. So prior to demolition, you want to remove any type of furniture, anything, appliances, clothing, any solid waste, so food scraps, trash, anything that's not affixed to the structure itself. There's an asbestos abatement that also goes into destruction or demolition of some of these structures. Other things that aren't that aren't construction demolition debris include solid wastes, yard wastes, bulk liquids, hazardous waste. Those are all other waste streams that wouldn't be covered within construction and demolition debris. So up through the 90s, we really regulated landfills and the disposal of construction demolition debris. And so we had our landfill program. What's new here, which we'll get into here in the next couple slides, is actually the C&DD processing. So what happens before the material is ultimately disposed of. So C&DD processing is that handling of construction demolition debris for purposes of separating the debris into individual types of material as a commodity for beneficial use or a beneficial manner that does not constitute disposal. So basically it's a very broad term. So any type of receipt, storage, movement of C&DD from a vehicle to a working surface to another vehicle, or say a dumpster to a working surface for load consolidation purposes, or to pick out material that could be recycled or reused. So why are we talking about construction demolition debris processing? Well, for many years, there's a lot of good businesses in the state that were taking material to, say, a third-party premise, separating out, like I said, any type of wood that can maybe be used as mulch, boiler fuel, other end uses for wood. They took the concrete and the clean hard fill, you can make it into aggregate. You could take the metal and pull out any kind of scrap metal and salvage that. There's all kinds of different things that you can divert from a landfill. So a lot of good actors, a lot of good businesses in the state. However, there's a small fraction of people that take advantage of those scenarios, maybe undercutting legitimate recycling businesses in the state or legitimate operations. And what they do is very quickly accumulate large volumes of material. Maybe there's no lawful disposal. Maybe they are doing some recycling, some good things, but ultimately maybe the end material is not being lawfully disposed of. And so we start having speculative accumulation. We start having a legal disposal of C&DD, and basically you start running into fire hazards and other type of hazards of mismanagement of this material. So what we wanted to do is we finally got statutory authority several years ago for the Director of Ohio EPA to promulgate rules regarding construction and demolition debris processing facility. So we did a couple-year effort working with our health district partners as well as regulated entities on developing rules regarding construction and demolition debris processing facilities. And basically, we want to support the responsible recycling of CNDD throughout the state. So what is an actual CNDD processing facility? Well, that's this piece of land, it's a location, it's a site, building that's used or is going to be used in the future for processing, transferring, recycling of CNDD. The big caveat here is it's not where the material is actually generated. So an example here is that you're knocking down a large structure, maybe you're demolishing an old hospital or an old school building. You're dropping that material on the ground where it's generated, and you maybe have pickers or some type of small bobcats or other processing equipment where you're picking out scrap metal, dimensional lumber, you're picking out aggregate, your bricks, your block, your metal to recycle. If you're doing it at the point of generation, you're not subject to a CNDD processing facility. It's taking the material to a third-party premise or third-party location or to a landfill. That's where these new rules come into play. So the first new rules went effective in April of last year, and that's for our standalone processing facilities. So as the name applies, this is kind of a third-party location where, say, a demolition company says they demolish a structure, or say demolish a bridge, maybe do some renovation in a industrial complex or a business. They take that material back to their shop. Maybe they start putting it on the ground at their shop so they can sort through it, they can consolidate loads, they can start pulling out different materials to recycle. These new rules that went effective back in April would be for those types of facilities. There's siting criteria. So there's proper distance that you have to be from occupied dwellings, from waters of the state, wetlands, from your property boundary. So there's some siting criteria that goes into these facilities. There's a permitting program. So these facilities have to apply for an initial PTI, permit to install. The permit's good for 5 years upon issuance. There's an annual operating license, and so after you get permitted, there would be a license that gets renewed every September. There's a concept called financial assurance. This is where, based on how much material you have staged on site, you can store material up to a year. So you're demolishing structures, you have this mixed, commingled construction demolition debris that you bring back to your standalone location. We want to make sure that there's enough money set aside in some type of financial instrument. So be it a bond or a trust of some sort, some kind of financial instrument where the money's set aside that in the unfortunate event the business goes bankrupt or something happens and the local county or the state has to clean up the material, we have that money set aside for cleanup activities. As part of the permit, there's some construction specifications, how you manage your horizontal limits of processing at your site, how your working surface is set up, where you're storing material, how you have your signage, various other stormwater controls are all kind of into the construction documents, as well as a fire prevention and response plan. Then there's the daily operational requirements. There's a certified operator that needs to be readily available, and record keeping, other operational requirements at the site, and as well as closure. So once you're at your end of life of the facility, you want to close, there's rules regarding how that process is done. The other type of processing facilities in the state are known as co-located processing facilities. These are the processing facilities that are on the footprint of a landfill. So instead of all the demolition debris and construction debris going straight to the landfill for disposal, there's multiple landfills in the state that want to set the material aside somewhere else on their property to do that sorting, that recycling, the processing of the material prior to disposal. Similar to our standalone facilities, these co-located facilities also have siting criteria. One thing that's different is they don't have a permitting program process. Our landfills in the state already are licensed, so this is just an additional license that gets tied into the landfill license for co-located facilities. And similar to the previous slide, there's a financial assurance component to make sure that any material that's staged on site does have that financial backing. Construction specifications, as well as some operational requirements, and same thing with closure. So we're here for another poll here. I gave you just a brief summary of our construction demolition debris processing facilities. I'll talk here in a little bit about what that means and why that's important to folks on today's call. But before I do that, I kind of want to hear from everybody on, have you heard about construction demolition debris processing in the past, or is this the first time you've heard about it? So I'll open up the polls here in a second, but the poll basically is, it's a yes or no question. Have you heard of C&DD processing facility rules before today?
Okay, I have launched the poll, so go ahead and please make your selection. Okay, it looks like most people have made their selection. If you haven't, please go ahead and wrap up. Okay, I'm sharing the results. There you go, Aaron.
Thanks, Helen. All right, so we're not quite split down the middle. It looks like just under 60% have heard of the rules, while 42% have not heard of the rules today. I'm guessing probably the local health departments, the state level folks, maybe even some of the C&D entities have heard about the rules. It's the community leaders, township trustees, county commissioners, local elected officials, I'm guessing probably have not heard about the rules until today. So I will keep on going here. So the main point of today's conversation was to make folks aware of this new program and to then ensure that the C&DD is being properly managed in the state. So what we were seeing prior to these rules being promulgated a couple of years ago and before we're starting this PTI licensing program for the standalone facilities and then the co-located processing facilities, there's a lot of federal funds right now, state funds, local funds for infrastructure bills and grants out there. So we do see that there's going to be probably a big uptick in demolition debris being generated. A lot of old structures, bridges, roadways, maybe older communities are being redeveloped over the next year or two based on all the money that's going to be out there and distributed. And so really what we want to ensure that when local officials, county officials are electing contractors to do work on behalf of local municipalities, townships, cities, counties, that they understand how the material is being managed and it's being managed lawfully. So when buildings are demolished and when the material is generated, we want to make sure that these demolition contracts and subcontracts, or say the dumpster businesses, the haulers of the material, we kind of know where it's going. And so where can C&DD lawfully go in Ohio? Well, now that we have this program, they can go to processing facilities, like I said, so they can go to a licensed and permitted standalone processing facility. The material can also go to a co-located processing facility or a licensed C&D landfill. C&DD can also be managed as solid waste, and so a licensed solid waste transfer facility can accept this material, as well as a licensed solid waste landfill. So those in the statewide, those kind of the four entities that can take this material once it's generated. If you want to kind of know if these facilities are on our list, if they're licensed and permitted and are on our radar, I suggest going to our EPA DMWIM webpage. And on our webpage, on the left side of our webpage, we have an area where there's reports and data, and that'll take you over to our solid waste and C&DD facility dashboard. In that dashboard, you can search by county, you can search by district office, you can also search by facility type. So if you want a list of licensed C&DD landfills in the state, you can click that drop down and it'll pull up by county all of the C&D landfills in the state. One thing I should note is this is our first year with the permitting and licensing program for our processing facilities. So those applications in many instances were due back in the fall. Right now, EPA and our approved health departments are reviewing the permit applications for standalone processing facilities, as well as the co-located license for those types of facilities. So if you're looking for those types of facilities, they probably won't be showing up on this list quite yet, because we only have 2 or 3 permitted sites in the state so far, and we only have 1 licensed co-located facility in the state right now. In the coming week, coming month, that list will start growing and become populated. So what happens if the business you're working with is not on one of these lists? What if it's not a landfill, or it's maybe not shown up on the processing facility list yet? Fortunately, what could be happening is the business may not be complying with the C&DD rules. Like I said, this is a brand new program. Last year was the very first year the rules became effective. So we're still trying to find our universe. So we're still doing some outreach, presentations like today and various other conferences and opportunities throughout the state to kind of get the word out. So the business may not be complying with C&DD rules because they're not familiar with the rules and they're not aware of them. Or in the unfortunate event, maybe they're choosing not to comply with the C&DD rules. As far as some of the landfills, MSW landfills, transfer facilities, C&DD landfills, there's instances where they could be operating off of a prior year's license while the license is being renewed or reviewed. Sometimes that renewal process or review process based on maybe past compliance issues or operational issues takes some time to review. So just because a landfill doesn't show up on the list doesn't mean that they're not a licensed landfill. We have several landfills that might be operating under a 2021 or 2022 license. And so if you do have questions about, hey, I thought I could send this material to a C&D landfill that's not on the list, please give us a call and we can look them up and say that, okay, this landfill does have a license. It just doesn't have a current year's license, but it still can accept debris. In some instances where the debris is generated kind of on our state boundaries, there's instances where the material might go out of state for lawful disposal or lawful processing. And so we see that happen where the material goes down into Kentucky or West Virginia or across to Pennsylvania, just because how close the facility is or how close the site is to some neighboring states. So that's acceptable. Interstate commerce and cross state lines, that's lawful. We can do that. Lastly, some of these businesses may be operating under an exclusion. So there's 2 main exclusions that I kind of want to cover today for processing facilities. The first exclusion is for a processing facility that consists solely of containers, and the containers have an aggregate volume of C&DD of 50 cubic yards or less, as long as that C&DD is not placed on a working surface or any equipment to separate the C&D. So this happens to a lot of the small demolition companies. There's a lot of renovation businesses in the state, a lot of very small demo companies. Say they might fill up a pickup truck or fill up a dumpster of material. They take it back to their office. They place that material in, say, a 40-yard dumpster. And as the month progresses, they're filling up that 40-yard dumpster slowly, within that course of a couple of weeks. As long as that material is not hitting a working surface, it's not being placed on the ground, it's not larger than 50 cubic yards, they can process C&D and not be considered a processing facility. So there are dozens, if not hundreds, of these facilities statewide that are smaller demolition companies that have a 40-yard dumpster or 2 20-yard dumpsters back at their place of business that get filled up and then taken to a landfill once they're full. Another exclusion is transporting construction and demolition debris from a location to a C&DD facility or processing facility, as long as it's stored for less than 7 days, as long as it's containerized. So in these situations, there's a lot of dumpster businesses that do weekly dumpster runs, and then they bring the dumpsters back to their central processing facility or central location, which is usually a warehouse or a large lot, where maybe they need to stage the dumpsters over a long weekend, a holiday weekend, or in some circumstances, some of these dumpster businesses do all their dumpster runs Monday through Thursday. They bring all the dumpsters back to their business, and on Friday and Saturday, they take those dumpsters to the local C&D landfill. So just because you're storing the material in the dumpster and it's being stored for less than 7 days, we don't regulate that as well as C&D processing, as long as that material always remains containerized. So if you're unsure if it's a processing facility, I suggest reaching out to me or my team. Here's our contact information. We all, like I said, are here in central office. We have great relationships with our district office staff as well as our health district partners. And so if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to any of us and we can get back to you with answers. Basically, the take-home message today was that as we go into the spring months here and the summer months, we're going to see kind of a ramp up of demolition projects statewide. Land banks, counties, local level will be doing a lot of projects based on various infrastructure bills, grants that are out there. We just want to ensure that contractors, subcontractors that are hired to manage this material are doing so in a lawful way that's protective of human health and the environment. So with that being said, I will open up the floor to some questions.
Okay, thank you, Aaron and the DIMWIM team. We have had a couple questions come in, and please continue to send your questions in as we go through these. So our first question is, do I need to get a permit and license to process C&DD on the demolition site?
Good question, Helen. No, so as long as you're doing that processing at the point of generation of the material, there's no permitting or licensing required. Our standalone facilities are those that are third-party locations outside of where it's generated, and our co-located facilities are those that are associated with the landfill. So if you're knocking down that structure, I think I gave an example earlier of knocking down a hospital or a school building, and you're doing that processing on site, you're pulling out that clean hard fill, the metal, other recyclable material, you're doing that separating on site, you don't have to be permitted or licensed through our program.
Okay, and this will be the last question before we wrap up. How many C&DD processing facilities are there throughout the state?
So as of right now, like I said, this is the first year we've had the program that went effective last year. We received 28 applications in for permits and for standalone C&DD processing facilities. So statewide, 28 standalone. And then we also received license applications for 10 co-located facilities. So those are the facilities associated with the landfill. So statewide, we have 38. So 28 is standalone, 10 is co-located. We think that number will go up in the coming months, years, as more and more entities understand the rules and kind of get brought into the mix here.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Aaron, for your great presentation, and to the DIMWIM team for behind the scenes help to address questions as they came in. Thank you, everyone, for attending today's webinar. This webinar is being recorded, and you will receive an email after the webinar with a link to the recording, a link to the survey, and a link to your certificate of attendance. The survey will also pop up once the webinar ends and you close your browser. We value your feedback and would greatly appreciate it if you let us know how we're doing and let us know if there's anything we can do to further assist you. Before we end for the day, please check out our upcoming webinars. Tomorrow we have a webinar on our Water Resource Restoration Sponsorship Program. The goal of the WRRSP is to counter the loss of ecological function and biological diversity that jeopardize the health of Ohio's water resources. To achieve this goal, the WRRSP provides funding for projects that specifically target the protection and restoration of high-quality streams and wetlands. Then on May 2nd, we have a webinar, Troubleshooting Noncompliance at Small Wastewater Treatment Plants. Do you have problems operating your wastewater treatment plant? Or noncompliance with your NPDES permit? Is your wastewater treatment plant not running the way it's supposed to run? Come learn how Ohio EPA's Compliance Assistance Unit in DEFA uses cheap, easy, and effective process control tools to diagnose treatment problems. You'll also learn how to monitor the treatment system to keep it in compliance. And then on May 17th, we have a webinar on the Construction Stormwater General Permit Renewal. This webinar will cover Ohio EPA's NPDES Construction Stormwater General Permit and changes that were made during the recent renewal. Topics include permit renewals, updated post-construction requirements like redevelopment clarifications, electronic record keeping, and notice of terminations. To register for these upcoming webinars, check out our new agency event calendar at the link on the slide. The events link is also on our webpage footer at the bottom of each web page. If you missed past webinars, you can go to DEFA's webpage at the link on the slide. Once you're on the DEFA webpage, click on the word training on the left-hand menu column. Here you'll find recordings of training you may have missed. You can also go to our agency YouTube channel to view recorded webinars. We'll post a recording of this webinar on our YouTube channel. It usually posts within a week of the webinar. We'll also post a PDF copy of the PowerPoint slides with the recording. The YouTube channel link can be found at the bottom of each of our web pages on the footer. The YouTube icon is next to the Twitter icon on the bottom right side. To receive notifications of upcoming webinars, go to our Ohio EPA Customer Support Center. You can create an account, then go to the option Subscribe to Updates. Then select the subscription option, All Trainings, Webinars, and Conferences. And you can go to that link on the slide, and the Customer Support Center link is also at the bottom footer of each web page. With that, we'll end today's webinar. Thank you again for joining us, and have a great day.